I order. Present are Committee Member Key, Committee Member Boyette, Committee Member Heinrichs, and the chairman, myself, Committee Member Howell. We do anticipate.
Leslie's here.
Oh, good. Leslie's here. Hi, Leslie. Sorry, I didn't see you. Didn't mean to neglect you. So Leslie, Committee Member Richards, also here. Committee Member Harmon is expected to show up late. So I anticipate another 10 minutes. And present staff present are Osana Tartarian and John Weigold. And I'm not going to call out the names of the public. Well, technically, they don't have to sign in, but because in this case, they actually do, or Zoom won't let them in, I think we can go ahead and record that it's present are also Crosby and Laura Swartz, Michael Calderwood, and Michael Calderwood. So let me commence then. Looking to check my agenda here. Okay. First, the chairman's report. So the main thing I have a couple things. First, as I mentioned, you are all aware of the ad hoc committee of the board of directors. That's Tom Gray and myself that are working on a kind of continuing the policy inventory and trying to figure out what policies may need review or might need to be provided. That's coming along pretty well. At this point, I don't have much to tell you all. We're basically continuing to charge forth as we are. I think ultimately, and I guess I'll go ahead and say this, may want to repeat it. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about our committee and comparing it to the other two and trying to figure out how we get our work and how are we different from the others and how are we the same or how might we proceed. So I just wanted to point something out, and I'm not proposing at this moment that we necessarily change what we're doing, but just something to think about as we go forward. In the case of the other two committees, the R&I is the easy one because that's one I have direct experience with. What happens with that committee is that while it is true that committee members do occasionally have research projects where they have gone off and done research and made a report, but their main function actually has been to take resources or infrastructure plans or initiatives that are being proposed by the staff, and they are then reviewing those and commenting on them. I don't really want to say vetting because that implies a little more, but that basically that they comment on them, recommend changes if they feel there should be one, and then pass that on with some recommendation to the board. So the point here is that the work of the committee is to evaluate the output of, in this case, staff before it proceeds to the board and that has two functions, at least as far as I can see. One, of course, is the obvious one that any board member who's listening to the committee's deliberations will have a kind of a preview of the important concerns before that matter ever reaches the board of directors. So it can be useful, a time saver, and it's certainly, I regard as an excellent opportunity to get a lot of other brains working on or evaluating an issue. So that seems to be, and the finance committee works similarly. In other words, the finance committee does not produce the budget, but it does look at the budget that staff produces and make comments about that, suggestions and recommendations. Same way on the capital improvement of the CIP list, capital improvement project list that the R&I committee works with. Again, that CIP list is produced by staff and then reviewed by the R&I committee, who then comments on whether it feels the prioritization of things is reasonable, or if there's something extra or something left out. But anyway, so it's, again, the point being, the material does not originate with the committee, but with some outside entity. In this case, either the staff on the one case, or now my thought is this: if we were to take that analogy and put it over onto our own committee, then the kind of stuff that we would be working on, in addition to the occasional research project, would be to review policies that are either put forth by either the staff or by the board. For example, if I was considering presenting to the board a policy regarding, I'll give you one, correspondence to the board, the very one we've been working on, then what I would do is, welcome, Claudia. What I would do is produce something which would then come to you guys, who would then tear it apart or or criticize it, point out the weak points or the strong points. But it would, again, it would serve as that that next spot that that gets where it gets looked at before the board ever sees it. The other important thing, and I don't know that it's this is something that I think was in all of our minds when we created these committees in the first place, is that in addition to what I just told you, the other thing which of important function that it provides, that the committees provide, is an additional opportunity for the public to make their voices heard. So that not only do they have their 3-minute moment in the spotlight during board meetings, but they have, in a somewhat less formal forum, the opportunity to speak, and perhaps without some of the limitations that we have to provide, what we enforce at board meetings. So those are the kinds of things. As we move forward, I think what we may see is more stuff coming to you having to do with proposed policies, which you can then look at and criticize, or that's not the word I really want, but to review and consider and comment upon. So now that we're all here, and we'll continue as we're going, because I think it is productive, but I think as we go forward, we may see more of this situation where new policies or revised policies would be coming before you, just like a revised CIP list or a budget would come before one of the other committees. So we're not really, just a second, Claudia, we're not really looking at this committee necessarily to actually be producing policies any more than we would ask the R&I committee to produce the actual plan as to how something should be done. Okay, well, that's enough conversation on my part. I think we're doing well. I don't have any problem with it. But as we go forward, I think as we're getting more and more to seeing where there are policy areas that need to be revised, that we will have the opportunity to exercise that function. In other words, to review things before the board gets it. Okay, having said that, I don't have anything more to, oh yes, I do. Two other things to report, but Claudia, you had your hand up first. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I really apologize for being late.
No problem.
I just have a quick question. I hate to make you reiterate, but so you're saying now that the policies will come to us from the CCSD and we will review them?
That's sort of the idea, is we try to think about where the work originates. That was the situation. We've been operating largely we've been operating in something of a vacuum since the committee began 2 years ago. So it's been a while to work it through to where we can we have some where all mutually agreed upon function and form for this committee. It's kind of been evolving. which hasn't been the case with the other two committees. It's been more direct. But yeah, Claudia, so I was just making the analogy that like the finance committee does not produce the budget, but it does review the budget. So by the same token, if I were to extend that analogy, we would say policy committee doesn't necessarily produce a policy, but it does review policies and comment upon them and possibly ask for changes. Yeah. Go ahead,
So
Claudia.
you're saying that the policy committee now doesn't make policy, we only review policy that the CCSD is going to give us?
I wouldn't say it that strongly. I'm just saying that in general, because there is option for independent research.
Options?
So,
Like the lighting policy that they turned down?
yeah, no, that was okay, but I'll come to that one in a minute.
Anyway,
Yeah,
okay. I just want to make this real clear. So we are not going to write policy. We're just going to approve policy, and that's what our function will be.
well, not entirely, but there is that. Let us put it that way. There is that function which we haven't done much of.
And whose decision was this? Was this yours and Tom's, or was this the whole board?
No, I was just me trying to think about how this committee can work productively. So as I said, I'm not asking you to do anything different than what you've been doing at the moment, but as things go forward, I think we'll see more on our agenda where you have a policy presented to you and you say, and we'll be saying, well, what do you think about that policy, for example? But there is another thing, and it's in our bylaws and it's in the board bylaws, which is there is another function, which is this committee should be reviewing and looking at policies and advising the board of the need of a policy as well. So that's where your lighting thing. Now they took our report, which said that they needed a lighting policy, and they didn't seem to agree with that. They felt that they didn't need a lighting policy, but we were performing our function in suggesting to the board that they did need a lighting policy. Now we'll come back to the lighting policy in a different context. So we do have, part of our charge is to make recommendations, policy recommendations, either recommendations that policies need to be changed or policies need to be developed. Yeah, Ted, go ahead.
You know, when we first got started, one of our big charges was to redo the director's handbook and get that onto a new platform, a more consistent platform. And that seems to be something that's sort of gone by the wayside with some of the other policies that have been presented to us. And so in some regards, you know, I see what you're saying. I mean, you know, all of us can look over the, you know, can approach chunks of the director's handbook, you know, at our leisure, you know, any time, and then review that to be reformatted and so on and so forth, which is fine. That's just, how do I say, that's just sort of the grunt work of the group. But and I don't say that as a light thing. It's important. But I do think it's important that we be able to present policies, you know, as we see them needing to be presented. I don't think that, you know, I don't think that we just ever thought that we would be anything but a review board. So, or committee. So that's just, you know, a concern of mine. If I'm on a policy committee, if I'm going to contribute to, you know, to the district in a more expansive way, I want to be able to, you know, work with committee members to put together policies that we think should be put forward. For example, the Dark Skies Initiative, and for example, what we're going to be discussing later today.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. You know, so I think it's just that as we move forward, I think we may be getting more. In fact, as we move through one of these agenda items, I'll make one proposal to you But I just wanted to kind of bring that forward as we try to think about how these committees are supposed to be working. And I suspect each director kind of has their own view on a lot of this. And they don't always necessarily agree. Yeah, Leslie, go ahead.
This is the policy manual handbook from CSD that we were supposed to duplicate. That was the assignment we were given from day one, Don. You weren't there when we were given this assignment. I was. I apologize, but I appreciate what I hear is you want us to rubber stamp whatever comes from the board, or as you put it, which I found quite interesting, your statement of how we tear apart and criticize. There's been some real weird words you've used here. So the whole mandate for policy was different from R&I, and it was different from finance. We were supposed to create the duplicate of this handbook. That was the whole point. And now you're saying, well, no, not necessarily. Now we're going to go back to a different situation here.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, so we're kind of backpedaling. So you want us to go ahead and approve the policies that come through or disapprove the policies that come through from the board, whether you need them or not. My whole goal is to go through this list, see this nice list of all the different policies we don't have in a handbook. That's my goal from day one. It would be nice to have an entire policy manual that someone could pull off the shelf. And I don't see that happening anywhere in the near future with what you're saying right now. If it's too sensitive or it's not something the board really wants to deal with, we're just not going to be dealing with. So I respect your position on this and what you're saying. I just don't agree with it. That was not the reason why. And we're not like R&I and we're not like finance. That is correct. We were supposed to go ahead and do this, create this document here. So, you know, to save staff time from wasting time on Crane, we were supposed to help the CCSD to do this, whether, you know, that's what you feel we should be doing or not. I respect your position on this. I just don't agree with you. That's not been the reason from the start. So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, John.
I just wanted to alert the chairman that we're straying off into Brown Act territory by having a discussion on this item, but we can add it to a future agenda item.
Thank you, John. You're absolutely right. And I didn't really want to provoke a discussion so much as just to kind of alert people to a little bit of a change in what we've been doing. So yeah, this actually is something worthy of more discussion. So I think we probably will put that on another agenda. I mean, soon too. But no, just to put sort of the end of it, Leslie, you misstate my position. I'm just saying that, no, I don't expect the things to be rubber stamped. In fact, I don't want them to be rubber stamped. But enough said on all that. To complete the report, I did bring our recommendation for lighting policy to the board, and it was rejected. I won't say rejected out of hand, but I think the general feeling was, why not wait until the county finalizes its rules? Now, that wasn't my position, and I really didn't like that idea, but nevertheless, that's where we are. However, I think it's not necessarily the death of the lighting policy. I think this is coming up again as we deal with the issue of climate change, for example. So these things, but basically what we did is Claudia did a very good presentation. You know, it was a good outline. These are the reasons why we need a policy, and it should look a little bit like, and a little bit of example of what it should look like, but the board just wasn't ready for that at that point in time. Yeah, Claudia.
You know what, I really thought that the reason why I wasn't there is because I thought all you're doing is just asking permission to write a policy. Did the board actually look at the suggested policy that I wrote?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, see, I didn't know they were looking at that. I thought they were just asking permission. And if I would have known they were actually looking at the policy, I would have been there to defend it. You know, I just have to say one thing. It really flabbergasted me that in 1 month, they write a letter of support unanimously. Everyone signed the letter of support. And then the next month, they don't want to do anything to process this, you know, lighting intention. And it's so contradictory that it's just flabbergasting to me. And if they didn't like the policy, the suggested policy, that's one thing to send it back to us and have us, you know, rewrite it or something. But, you know, basically what that policy says is that you have to abide by the code, any code that's there. And there are violations to the code right now, the existing code. And if they want to wait until the county makes a new code, it's not going to change a whole lot as far as the district is concerned. It still says right now you can't have light trespassing, you have to shield lights. It already says that. So
Right.
I'm not quite sure what they're afraid of. And the policy for the CCSD is to save money. So I'm not sure why they don't want to do that either. You know, I mean, the whole reason I would present a lighting policy to the district is because you're in charge of street lights and you have other lights. And if you do this policy, then you would save money for us ratepayers. But
Yeah.
they don't want to do that. So there's a disconnect that occurred with this that since I wasn't there, I guess I couldn't address it, but I didn't realize you were going to present the policy. I only thought it just said, you know, I don't know.
Well,
Now I understand why people are calling me and asking me why I wasn't there. And I said, well, they're just asking if we write a policy. So.
Well, actually, Claudia, you were correct the first time. That what we did, the agenda item was asking permission, was recommending to the board that the policy committee come up with a lighting policy. That was the recommendation. The board didn't reject a policy, they rejected the recommendation. There was no lighting policy presented. What was presented, if you look at the document, it was just this it is a laying out the reasons why we need a lighting policy. And just a minute, Leslie. Again, we're getting off. This is out of order at this point, but I do want to make, as part of the report, it's in other words, the lighting policy itself isn't dead. It's just that we were asking for instructions from the board, and the board declined to give us those instructions.
Okay, so tell me what isn't dead about it when they said that they will not allow us to write a lighting policy.
It doesn't mean that we can't still do it. but we would have to, but it's highly unlikely they would adopt it.
Right.
Yeah, so, but there's a little bit of a semantic difference though. And I just wanted to make that very clear that the way I presented it to the board was that we were recommending that there be a lighting policy, not recommending a lighting policy per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I wasn't, okay, I had that clear. But, you know, Carlos Mendoza is, you know, one of the people who's asking for this because he wanted directions on, you know, on this. But I guess they don't want to give him any directions. They just let him continue to be helter-skelter and put in whatever he wants. And sometimes he doesn't know what he's putting in until after it's been put in. So it's interesting. So
it's interesting. And as the reason I say it can still be talked about. In other words, they're not saying that this is not an item that can be discussed.
So we just have to come at it from a standpoint of an energy policy.
Yeah, come at it from another angle. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, again, we're getting off the topic, but I did want to report on that. And the other thing that you may not be aware of is our replacement, a policy for replacing vacancies on the board of directors by appointment. I just wanted to let you know that the examples that policy itself has been adopted, but the examples were wrong and needed to be replaced. So I'm asking, those will be on the consent agenda, I think probably for the next board meeting. And that should tie that thing up with a ribbon and a bow and be done with. So that's the substance of my report. Sorry, we kind of got off topic a little bit there. But I guess it would be appropriate. Let's see. So do we have any of our ad hoc subcommittee reports? Any of those projects that anybody is working on? Okay. Seeing none, let us move on. I'm going to now, I guess we're ready for general public comment. So for this will be public comment on items not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak? I'll wait just a minute. Suddenly we're getting huge numbers of people here. Anybody want to speak on the, okay. Last call for public comment.
Hey, stop trolling.
Okay, it looks like we're, Osana, let us know.
Your numbers are bad.
Now,
I'm here to stop trolling my fucking self. Shoot the bitch. Shoot the fuck.